Welcome to the Farming on Purpose podcast, a podcast for farmers and ranchers ready to shift for a stronger future. Today's challenges in agriculture are new, but the grit and determination required to be successful are not. On the Farming on Purpose podcast, you'll hear how producers of all sizes and practices are moving mountains for things they believe in, all in the name of an industry that keeps growing and innovating for a stronger food system and stronger farm families. I'm your host, Lexi Wright, and I'm excited to discuss where producers are finding success, challenging the status quo, striving for better, and keeping our heritage alive, all while producing the food we depend on. Hey there, it's Lexi, and I am sliding into this podcast episode with an opportunity for those who are interested in it. The last time that you sat down to plan your marketing, do you know when it was? Was it hard? Were you confused? Did you feel like you actually should be working on your business instead of trying to make social media posts or write emails or design ads? If that's you, I created a system to develop a full year's marketing strategy and a plan to implement it in 8 hours or less. Yes, really, 8 hours, one day. Sit down, plan all of your marketing for the entire year, and actually have the things in place so you can implement it, not just a really pretty outline on a calendar. So you'll walk away with a roadmap for your marketing activities for the next 12 months, confidence in knowing exactly what to do and when to do it, and more time to focus on actually running your business instead of worrying about your marketing. So if you are tired of just winging it or getting stressed out by trying to remember to do your marketing, check out this offer. You can find out when it's ready at farmingonpurpose.com/plan. farmingonpurpose.com/plan. I'd love to see you there.
Welcome back to Farming on Purpose. Today I have Jessica Lewis with me, and Jessica is from Back to Root Farm. So Jessica is going to share with us how she has grown their business. They started with goats and now have chickens and soaps and candles and all kinds of things going on, as well as educational classes for teaching some of these skills to people. And I love that. I'm so excited to have you here, Jessica, and share your story with folks. Do you want to just give us a background of kind of your agriculture experience and then kind of what brought you to where you are today?
Yes, absolutely. So, hi, again, I am Jessica Lewis, the owner and operator of Back to Roots Farms. A little bit about myself. So I was not born into agriculture or had any background in it other than my grandparents had a few horses growing up. So I did like the horse camp. I am originally from the capital of Florida, Tallahassee, Florida, and grew up in the suburbs, a very city life. I tell people that I ran to the farm as quick as I could, and have this kind of, if you're a homework person, it might give off the same type of vibes, but I met a small town boy. And shortly after him and I started dating, I moved up to the small town of Thomasville, Georgia. It is at the very bottom tip of South Georgia. And a couple of things, we didn't have a farm starting out. I was kind of the push for that. I always had a romantic kind of view of the farm. And while I still at times can definitely see the romanticism in it, that viewpoint was quickly crushed once I got into the lifestyle itself. We very quickly started off with a bottle baby goat. So that is not your typical entry animal into agriculture. And it just started a obsession that quickly escalated to chickens. We've had quail at some point, pigs, a small for-profit garden, and recently jumping into soaps, medicinal kind of cures, ointments and things like that. And now I teach a large group to basically anything we cover, soap classes, canning classes are fixing to start up, and just anything to help people learn these skills that have been lost. And I am definitely that friend in the group that when you leave my house, you won't, trust the government, and you'll learn how to can and things like that. So,
Oh, I love it. Well, that sounds like quite the whirlwind of jumping into agriculture and growing your farm and business. So, what have been some of the highlights along the way, favorite parts of the journey?
So some of the favorite parts for me have definitely been getting into livestock itself. Every different animal that we have brought on the farm has taught me important lessons, and also just been a milestone for me to accomplish. With the goats, we started with bottle babies, and just that brings joy itself. You're these little bouncy balls of energy that get into everything and make you laugh a lot. So some of the other biggest accomplishments have been just raising my children in this lifestyle. And at times when you get kind of accustomed to a certain lifestyle, you sometimes can find yourself not necessarily finding joy in the small things. So bringing children along with that and seeing it through their eyes, a seed coming up out of the ground isn't a seed anymore. It's now this like miraculous thing when you look through it from a child's eyes. And then teaching classes and being able to kind of plant the seed itself for other people to get excited for things that have been lost in our generation has also just been something that has brought tons of happiness and joy, and to be honest, all of it.
Yeah. Well, all of me. Yeah, that's awesome. I can tell you're really passionate about it and really just excited to be doing what you're doing. What is the driving force behind that? Is it anything in particular that you're kind of seeking or working towards?
So I originally, when I graduated high school, I wanted to do early childhood education, and quickly kind of realized that the main school system was not a place for me. So I really feel like, it is my calling and joy to like educate in some way. And until I got into agriculture, I didn't realize that passion that I had for teaching would be based in agriculture. So the driving force for me is that I, one, love the lifestyle, but two, I have, especially when the pandemic hit and everything, I had so many people that they didn't know what to do in the situation where they couldn't get groceries, or they were finding out that, skincare products are actually more damaging to their skin than they help. And so being able to teach other people to be more self-reliant and essentially get back to the roots of a simpler life has definitely been a driving force for me.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned that anybody who comes to visit your house will leave with a distrust of the government, which I think a distrust of the government is always healthy. They do good things, but we also, there's checks and balances for a reason. What are some of the things that you have been most excited to teach people or to maybe open their eyes to that they hadn't thought about before?
So, the big thing has been, one, the skincare industry. So a lot of the products that we are putting on our skin are damaging to the skin. They could actually age your skin prematurely from use of them and cause a buildup on it. So that is one, which is our big push for soaps. We do soap, shampoo bars, and teach classes on how to make that. And another one is raw milk, and kind of the history that the government has twisted in order to make it seem like it is the enemy, when a lot of allergies, including eczema or seasonal allergies, can benefit from the consumption of raw milk. And how our food system in general, we're adding 40 ingredients to something that should only take 3 ingredients to make. And a lot of those ingredients that are added to it, while they will say it's for like preservation to make it last longer on the shelf, at the same time, those can be linked to people that might have gluten intolerance and other allergens and things like that have taken out and brought back to how it was done at one point before we did mass production. That it can essentially heal you and your gut and things that you might not even realize are linked with what you're intaking.
I think the food system and the like history of food is just so fascinating, because I find it really challenging, coming from a somewhat agriculture background. We are taught to rely pretty heavily on the statistics and the information that is put out by USDA and FDA. And looking at the nuance behind some of that information just is so interesting to me. Are there things, you mentioned the skincare, things that you have learned along the way that have just made you look at things differently?
I am notorious for being the 3 a.m. rabbit hole type. I will have friends, and I am like the conspiracy friend in the group. So my friends, I'm the crazy aunt too, just to have kids. So really, it's just a distrust that I have come with. Just growing up, being lactose intolerant, finding things that I couldn't digest. And to be honest, I'm a pretty stubborn person. If I'm, growing up lactose intolerant, I was going to eat cheese because cheese is great. So learning that things such as like raw milk and things like that, a living food essentially that I don't have those same sensitivities to, it kind of started it. And then it was like, oh, well, what about this? And the next thing you know, I'm up at 3 a.m., reading an article or listening to a podcast of how, conventional food is linked to, eczema and other things. And I'm like, oh no.
It's fascinating, the things that you can read about in the studies that have been done now, like that there are more people becoming interested in this. I think it's really neat that you are doing small scale agriculture and food. And I think a lot of like the brand or the mission behind your business, the Back to the Roots, is one that a lot of people see a lot of value in. But we've come so far from that it's hard to know how to go back. And again, not saying anything is wrong or it's anybody's fault that this is how it's gotten to be. But I think a lot of people would love to go back to that. How do we think about even starting that process when we've become so reliant on the system as it is?
So one thing I tell people is if you want to even just dip into it to see if that there's a difference in the food that you can consume, a few things is find local people. So don't necessarily, if you want to do raw milk, don't necessarily go out and buy your cow. Like that's a whole learning curve on its own to do. But maybe put a plug out there and see if you can find somebody local that sells raw milk. Then you can try it, see if this is something that works for you. Just consuming it. And then the next steps, you can start just doing baby steps with it. I always tell people a good starting point is to start eating, either shopping at your local farmer's market, start eating seasonally, and then to start a garden or to start baking. Like those are the two low cost, easiest ways to get into it. And especially with the garden, I have a lot of people that tell me, well, I can't grow anything, which seeds want to grow. Like it's their one job that they want to do. So I always tell people that to just till up a little bit of earth or just get you a pot container and plant something, just throw a few seeds out there, whether it's flowers, pumpkins, just even if you're not going to consume it right then and there, seeing something itself grow is going to give you the confidence to sit there and go, okay, I can do this one thing. And it just kind of ease yourself into it to get confident before diving off the deep end. I always tell people that I am a very jump in the gun person. So when they hear that I started off with bottle baby goats, they're like, how? Why? And it's like, I can't explain that to you other than it sounded like a great idea. So obviously, maybe not do that, but to just dipping your toes in. So sourcing locally is a great way to even try to figure out, is this something that can fit into your life right now? And there are going to be seasons where, there have been seasons where I have had 40 plus chickens, and then seasons where I've had to dwindle that back down to just enough for my family. So understanding that ebb and flow is going to happen with that. And to not be afraid of failure, because it is going to happen. You're going to have crops you lost. You're going to have a sourdough starter that you forgot to feed for a week because life got busy, and it's okay. Generally with anything, you can always start over. And normally when you start over, it's going to come back bigger and better than it was before.
Yeah. Well, those are great tips and advice to getting started. I think that the more that we can just try to be involved in the process of our food, the better, for anybody, no matter if they have a interest in homesteading or that vein of things or not.
Does your business accept online payments, credit cards, or bank transfers? You're going to want to know about a tool called ThriveCart. I've been using this tool on my own website and on clients' websites for years and have been so happy with it. ThriveCart is a software tool you can use to design online checkouts with every option you can dream up. You can sell physical and digital products, connect to loads of other softwares you use for your website, accept payments, email marketing, and more. This is the most powerful tool that I use and the lowest cost one for my business. I recommend it for anyone who accepts online payments, who wants to increase their revenue or average order value on any type of product that you sell. In my show notes, you can find an affiliate link that I have for ThriveCart that gets you a great deal on a one-time payment, no subscription, and also allows me to earn affiliate income from this tool that I really enjoy and recommend. If you have any questions about how ThriveCart could work for your business, feel free to shoot me an email and I'd be happy to chat with you about it. Now, back to the show.
When you mentioned that you had a for-profit garden, and I like that you specify it that way, because I think a lot of folks, it's a different mindset, right? If you're farming or growing something for profit versus for your family. Do you want to talk a little bit about what led you down the path of doing it for business versus for just your family?
So what led to it being things becoming for business is that I had excess at the end of whether it be growing season, kidding season, and things like that. Having excess that I had to realize that if I didn't utilize it, it was going to go to waste. And that's what switched me into the for-profit of selling side, was at first to just sell excess of what I was producing for my own family. And then that grew into friends, families, their friends. I've had random strangers approach me and Tractor Supply to buy goats before. Just word of mouth getting out has led us to grow more and more, to try to provide for others as well.
Yeah. So, what were some of the first things that you sold, and then how has it grown over time since then? What has that process been?
So the first things that I ever sold were goats. They were my pride and joy. And I think that I might have oversupplied our area with Nigerian dwarf goats for a couple of years. And when the market for that started to shift, that there was more supply than there was demand. I did sell the goat herd. My husband doesn't know, but I'll probably be getting sheep soon. But then I shifted towards chicken and quail, along with starting to make our soaps. So our soaps, we actually had a family friend of ours reach out, and this was a recipe that was passed down to him. And he wasn't going to do really anything with it other than just maybe make a few loaves a year just for himself. And so he asked my husband if it was something that I would be interested in, possibly marketing and selling and getting out there, which I have a hard time of saying no to things when I want to do all the things. So I have a hard time saying no at points to things. And so, of course, I jumped on that opportunity. And that was what pivoted us into selling the soaps. Since the soaps have started, we've grown into doing classes. And every class that we put on, it's kind of been people approaching us to go, well, we loved your soap class, but we want to learn how to do this skill and this skill. And it has pivoted us more into education side of agriculture versus where we were as the market side of agriculture. We still go to market and sell things, whether it be produce, our soaps, or livestock. Our main focus this year has been on the chickens and the pigs for livestock wise.
Mm-hmm.
We plan to bring in more as things grow.
Cool. Well, it's neat to see kind of the evolution of the business. And I think it's really cool that you guys have been able to, like you said, pivot when markets changed. That's one of the hardest things I think about being in a farm business. For me, I'm a systems person. So when things have to change, it's like, oh no, the world is crashing down, but really it's not that big of a deal. So was that something that came easily to you guys, or was it something that kind of took getting used to?
Change wise, I would say that it was probably something easy for me to get accustomed to. I am a person that is really quick on my feet, and I can adjust and adapt really quickly to things. And us being a smaller scale, I feel like gives us a better opportunity to do that. We're not at a large industrial sized farm where, okay, well, the market for cattle is crashing at this point, and you have, 1,000 head of cattle that if you want to go into something else, you have to get rid of. Us being on the smaller scale, we may have 10 to 20 animals. That's a lot easier if you want to get out of something in order to process, to either rehome or get it sent to a butcher to sell for cuts or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really would say that the size matters. That's why I always tell people to start off small. If you're going to get started, start off small. It's easier to grow with than it is to try to scale back.
Yeah.
If you large.
Definitely. I can vouch for that. As you mentioned that you are quick on your feet, you can adapt quickly, and you kind of even have that as an asset in how your business is set up. That's awesome. You touched on a point there though, that it's also kind of you as a person can adjust and change. And I think that's important to remember as business owners, that we are individuals and the things that happen in our businesses also affect us. What are some of the changes and growth points that you've seen as you guys have been building this business and raising your family?
So I would say that just the ebb and flow of how life happens. When we first started being predominantly with goats and stuff like that, if you had asked me if I was going to be standing in front of 30 people teaching a class at some point, I would have told you absolutely not. But having to figure out what is a way that brings income, but also works to where my time can be spent focusing on the things that are important to me. And so with having a small family, they're going to be like having young kids is going to be a main focus of me. And just realizing that the classes, when I pivoted to the classes, that offered me more free time and to be able to have my animals at a smaller scale because I wasn't relying on the animals as much to bring in a profit or an income as I am now in the classes.
Gotcha. What are some of the classes that you guys are putting together now then? You mentioned a few, like the soap making and the canning is going to be starting. What else are you guys working on?
All the things. I want to teach all classes. I am a person, I get excited over other people's excitement. So if I have somebody that comes to me and it's like, hey, do you know how to do this? It's like, I do. And I would love to teach you. So with our soap making classes, we have a couple of different ones that we offer. We offer our basic soap. We do a CBD soap. We're bringing in a goat milk soap. I have a private class that I'm teaching to some folks in a few weeks of how to do goat milk soap. They just brought goats onto their own farm. So they want to learn how to do the thing for the products that their goats are going to produce. We also do shampoo bars, canning. I want to start offering processing classes for people to learn how to process poultry, pigs, and small like hoofed animals like sheep and goats and things like that to show people that, well, a processor is a great thing if you can get in for, I think ours is sitting at 8 months wait time to get an animal in. If you can wait for that to get certain cuts of meat, that is great. But what happens if that just isn't plausible in that moment? And I want to make sure that people aren't nervous if they do have to go that route of processing at home, that they feel confident in order to know what to do. Also, I'm hoping to teach some like baking classes when it comes to bread. That's been a lot of things that people have had questions with. People don't realize how much science goes into bread. So when they start it and it doesn't rise or it just, doesn't come out like like the way that you would go and buy it from a store, people can get a lot of, they get discouraged very easily. So honestly, I'll teach anything that I know.
Well, cool. Are you, as you kind of put together your different classes, are you just seeing what folks are interested in? And are those all in-person classes or have you branched into online classes?
I just recently, probably last week, took a video to try to edit. I'm not the best person when it comes to videotaping and social media, I would say. I'm not one of those people, that's going to get 1,000 views on a video. But I recently did record 2 classes for soap making to hopefully post them online. Let's see how the editing goes with it. I might have to bring in a more tech savvy friend to help out with that. But most of our classes, all of our classes actually right now are in person. So that's the focus, but we are hoping to pivot online. And when it comes to deciding what classes that I offer next, it's really just, I don't even think that I've had to really put anything out there to see what people would be interested in. I just have a majority of people coming to me asking, am I going to do this? And then am I going to do that? So they're coming to me with the interest of certain classes. And normally that's what I do next.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
Hey guys, it's Lexi here with a bonus for you on this episode. I wanted to briefly share with you something that I have been collaborating on with thetinylife.com. In the past, on some episodes, I've shared about what our process was like for finding land and trying to expand our farm and all of the obstacles that we faced in doing that. And I know this is a very common struggle for beginning farmers, for expanding farmers, and for people who maybe are already on a farm and just looking to diversify it or add something that's their own little piece separate from their family. So we all have this obstacle that is out there. And this resource that we've been collaborating on, has put together a great guide to finding different avenues to find land. There are lots of different ideas in there that you can pursue no matter how long you've been in this search. I think you'll find something new in this guide. TheTinyLife.com is a website that is focused on minimalism and finding ways to simplify your life, which I just find really enjoyable because it's something I think we can all take something from and learn a lot. They also have a great resources that you can check out about homesteading and finding really cool tutorials there too, especially if you're into gardening or think you might want to think about how you want to lay out your property. They have great guides and resources and content for you there that you can check out. So access that free download for ideas and a guide to finding land. You can find that at thetinylife.com/FOP for farming on purpose. thetinylife.com/FOP. Go check it out.
What has the experience been of bringing your family along for this? You mentioned that you may be getting more animals soon and raising the kids alongside that and watching things through their eyes. What other things have you guys gotten to do alongside them or show them along the way?
So I will say that my oldest, she's going to be turning 7 this December. And she is very much like me, wants all of the animals, all of the gardening, to the point that my husband has said that her and I are not allowed to go to farm swaps or livestock auctions alone anymore because last time we came home with rabbits randomly. And I wish I could say that that was the first time that I have ever just surprised him with random livestock, but it's not. So with her being very much like me, the transition with bringing her along to it has been super easy. We started this lifestyle whenever, before she was even born. So this is really, been something that she's been 18 months sitting in my lap while I have a baby goat that I'm bottle feeding in my lap too. And it's just been something that she has grown up knowing. And my youngest, he is just now 18 months. So he loves eating all of the things that we grow. But the hands-on that like my older one has, he hasn't necessarily got to experience yet. I will say that my husband isn't as on fire for this lifestyle as I am. Him growing up in a small town, he grew up with family that had the farm. And with anybody that gets into agriculture, you have your highs and then you also have your lows at the time. And depending on your mindset, those lows can hit harder than the highs can. And I think that that is just how he kind of grew up, was with the lows hitting a lot harder for him. So he's not as excited. I would say that I think the only thing that he might be really excited to bring in would be bees. But I think that those are, while bees are their own learning curve, they're not as like hands-on as like going out there and having a pig or a chicken or, we had a cow at one point and I learned very quickly that we were not set up for a cow. But it was definitely a learning curve.
Yeah. There's always going to be those, I think, in anything new you start. And when it's another live creature, definitely going to be.
Yeah. I will say for sure with people, whenever they approach me, I was like, I pretty much have done it all. And while I do romanticize the lifestyle myself, like I love the idea of growing my food and supplying things for others and seeing like all the ebbs and flows that come with agriculture. I also have done all of the incredibly stupid things of not researching livestock before I brought it on. Like I didn't know anything about goats. And here I was with 2 bottle babies trying to figure it out. My vet made a really good penny off of me the first like 2 years of having goats. And I'm like, oh, they have to go in to see the vet. But I'm straightforward with people when it comes to things of the agriculture world and things that I have learned. I'm not someone that's going to be like, oh, it's great, you need to get into it. I'm going to tell you both sides of it. So that way you're also not having to spend, mortgage payments amount in your first 2 years of owning goats too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you guys have expanded, it sounds like you had a vet to rely on, which is great. Has there been other mentors or people along the way that made things easier, or has it been all kind of just like go on your own rate?
It's been a lot of it has been self-taught. I wouldn't really say that I've had any mentors. I have now, after years of being in agriculture, I actually have a great group of women that I am a part of. We're all into homesteading. A lot of them are into raising for profit themselves and homeschooling. And we are Christian faith-based. So we're called The Forge and everything. And that has been something that has been great to have now. But getting started, I did not have a mentor. And I think that's why I push so much to wanting to educate others to fill a void that I didn't have. It's not how it used to be, where if you wanted to get into something, you could go down the road and you have a neighbor that is, raising goats or would be, raising chickens or doing a large scale farm operation that you could ask your questions to. I think that as we got away from agriculture, that also the lines around the farm have tightened because so many people that would love to be a mentor have been burned in some way by somebody whose intentions weren't true to wanting to learn agriculture and skewed it in a negative way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have people, it's farms and ranches of all sizes on here. And I think that you hit the nail on the head there I think it's a welcoming community, but the welcoming also sometimes comes with just a little bit of hesitance of like, well, what is this actually? Or, well, who are you? And fear of judgment too, I think, because of a lot of the things that are going on now with like the homesteading movement and people wanting to do things a different way. There's a lot of farms that don't do it that way. And so that lack of resources there to do it the way you're wanting to do it is just not as prevalent, like you said.
Mm-hmm. And it depends on how things are rooted in the area that you are trying to grow within. Around here, we have a lot of cattle farmers and we have a lot of hay farmers and cash crops like cotton and peanuts. So for somebody like me, that when I was getting started being interested in like rotational grazing and how can I raise successfully and still caring for the land, the most animals possible on the small amount of land that I do have. And if I was to try to find a mentor for somebody that has, 400 acres and they have cattle on it, they're not going to know how to talk to me out of that. And to be honest, looking back, they would probably think that I was like some crazy hippie, which I mean, I get it to an extent, but it's just it almost gets us into a stubborn way, depending on how your area is, of this is the way that it's always been done. And so, thankfully, with having people push forward like Joel Salatin and others that have kind of showed that it is possible to go large scale with those practices, I think it's more accepted.
Yeah, definitely. The land prices, I know everywhere, are crazy, but I think that's been another piece that makes the farming community like a little bit tighter knit and maybe resistant to smaller farms, because they see all of the farmland being broken out, bought by developers and broken out into little ranchettes, they call them, or 20-acre parcels, and that's threatening to them. Have you guys had to deal with that or negative connotation around that?
I wouldn't necessarily say that we've had to deal with any negative feelings or anything like that. Thomasville itself is a very wealthy area. It has a lot of old money. So a lot of the ranches that are here or the farmland that is here has been owned for generations. And agriculture is really rooted deep. So generally when there is a passing, we don't ever really see farmland up for sale. The most that you'll see is 5 to 20 acres, and it isn't land that had been split up. You do have a lot of smaller farms on top of the older generational large farming. And I don't think that there is any I haven't ever felt any negative feeling. I just didn't have as much of the warm fuzzy welcome when it comes to mentorship. I think that just depending on the situation, another stigma whenever I was kind of getting into it was a woman in agriculture wasn't as common in our area as men in agriculture. And so I think it was a kind of having to prove that I can do this in everything and that I wasn't going to just give up in a year. Even my family was like, "Are you sure that you can process animals? Are you sure that you can do that?" And I'll never forget. I mean, it just shows how rooted it is when it comes to my oldest is that my father, he was from New York, born and raised in New York, and city boy whole life. And so to him, this is just a foreign concept that his daughter is raising her own animals for food. And we had a cow at one point, and when we sent them to be processed, he asked my oldest, she was probably about 4 at the time, and he was like, "Oh, don't you miss cow?" And she's so used to this life that she looked at him and she's like, "I get to see him every day in the freezer. He's delicious."
That's funny.
Yes, she definitely is something else.
Well, good. That's always exciting when you have a kiddo that is interested in the same things, and just makes it all more fun.
And I feel like it also having that type of sense of humor, because I have the same sense of humor. So whenever I have had people that didn't agree with my lifestyle, kind of tried to attack it, I think that almost letting it roll off your back and having a sense of humor about it definitely sets you up to where you're not taking as hard of a hit and feeling negatively impacted when somebody doesn't agree with you. And so to see her already have it so young, it's like, "Oh, you're going to do just fine. You're going to be just fine in this world."
Yeah. That's good. That's great. As you guys, I mean, you come a long way from just with your very first bottle baby goats to now teaching classes for other people to learn these skills. If you look back at that journey and that process, I'm sure there were high points and low points. What would you have told yourself if you could go back and say something to yourself when you were just beginning?
That you're going to be just fine. It's all going to work out. I mean, I remember specifically times having goats go down or pigs go down and just absolutely on the floor sobbing, which that's kind of a big stigma that the people outside of agriculture try to put on the farmers is that, well, they're just dollar signs to us. We don't care. And I mean, there was a goat at one point, bottle baby goat I had that we named her Hope. And I mean, I was waking up every hour because she couldn't regulate her temperature and having to either put her like a feeding cat or syringe feed her because she didn't have a good enough suck reflex for a bottle. And looking back at that in that moment, I mean, I was just like, man, what am I even doing? How did I get here? And so if I could go back, it would honestly just be like, I would just tell myself that you're going to be just fine. It is going to work out.
Yeah. Well, good. I think it's great what you're doing, beginning farming from, nothing really, and learning all these skills and sharing them with others. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. Do you want to let folks know where they can find you if they want to learn more, or if they're local, where they can find out about your classes?
Yes. So you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Our name is Back to Roots Farm. And our website, which has information for our classes, if for some reason you have an issue locating us on social media, is going to be www.backtorootsfarmga.com. homesteading.com. I'm not the best at social media. I definitely don't think that I post the most aesthetically pleasing things on there, but I post the honest, raw more of agriculture when it comes to it.
Perfect. Well, everybody be sure to check out her social media and learn more. And if you're local in Georgia, check out the classes. It sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and I appreciate it.
If you've enjoyed spending time with us today, please take a moment to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or join the conversation on social media. Do you have a topic you would like to discuss or know someone with a story to share? Apply to be a guest on the podcast at farmingonpurpose.com. You can follow the host of Farming on Purpose, Lexi, on your favorite social media platforms for more content by searching for Farming on Purpose. And remember, if you look around your table and aren't inspired by the people there, it's time to find a new seat.